Have you ever wondered how close we've come to the end of the world as we know it? It's a chilling thought, but history is filled with moments where humanity teetered on the brink, saved only by a combination of luck, courage, and sometimes sheer coincidence. These aren't stories from a Hollywood movie, they are real events that could have changed everything. Today, we're going to dive into some of the most terrifying close calls in human history, the moments when the world stood on the edge. Let's start our journey in the heart of the Cold War, a period defined by tension and the constant threat of nuclear annihilation. Picture this, it's October 27, 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis is at its peak. American warships are dropping depth charges, not to destroy the sub, but to force it to surface. Inside the B-59, the crew is exhausted, the air is foul, and temperatures are soaring. They haven't heard from home in days and believe war may have already broken out. The captain, Valentin Savitsky, convinced they are under attack, decides to launch their secret weapon, a nuclear-tipped torpedo. This single act would have instantly vaporized the U.S. aircraft carrier and triggered a full-scale nuclear war between the superpowers. But launching required the agreement of 3 senior officers. The captain and the political officer both said yes. The fate of the world came down to one man, Vasily Arkhipov. Now, let's fast forward a couple of decades to another hair-raising incident you've probably never heard of. The date is September 26, 1983. The Cold War is still icy, and tensions are high after the Soviets shot down a Korean airliner. Deep inside a secret bunker near Moscow, Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Petrov is the duty officer at the Soviet Union's Early Warning Command Center. His job is to monitor satellites for any sign of a U.S. missile launch. Suddenly, just after midnight, the alarms blare. The system reports that a single intercontinental ballistic missile has been launched from the United States. Then another, and another, soon. The system is screaming that 5 missiles are heading toward the Soviet Union. The protocol is crystal clear: report the attack up the chain of command, which would almost certainly trigger a massive, retaliatory nuclear strike. But Petrov had a gut feeling. Something wasn't right. His training told him to trust the system, but his intuition screamed otherwise. A first strike from the U.S. would be a massive, all-out assault, not just 5 missiles. It seemed illogical. He also knew the satellite system was new and could have bugs. In a decision that went against all his orders, Petrov reported it as a false alarm, a system malfunction. He was taking an immense risk. If he was wrong, Soviet cities would be incinerated with no retaliation. If he was right, he prevented World War III. As the minutes ticked by, agonizingly slow, his superiors demanded answers. Petrov stuck to his guns. And then, relief. No missiles appeared on the horizon. There were no corroborating reports from ground radar. It was, as he suspected, a false alarm caused by a rare alignment of sunlight on high-altitude clouds. Stanislav Petrov, like Vasily Arkhipov, was another ordinary man in an extraordinary position who chose reason over protocol. His decision wasn't celebrated at the time. In fact, it was kept secret for years. But today, we know that his calm judgment saved millions, if not billions, of lives. These nuclear close calls are terrifying, but the brink isn't always about missiles. Sometimes, it's about a threat we can't even see. Let's go back to 1918. World War I is drawing to a close, but a far deadlier enemy is sweeping across the globe, the Spanish flu. This wasn't your ordinary seasonal flu. It was a hyperlethal strain of influenza that attacked the young and healthy with frightening speed. It spread like wildfire, carried by soldiers returning home from the war. And like other pandemics that had been localized, this one went global in a matter of months. It's estimated that it infected about 500 million people, which was a third of the world's population at the time. The death toll was staggering, somewhere between 50 and 100 million people. To put that in perspective, that's more than all the soldiers and civilians killed in World War I combined. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Morgues ran out of space. Cities implemented quarantines, closed schools and theaters, and made face masks mandatory. But the virus was relentless. In some communities, the mortality rate was so high that they simply couldn't bury the dead fast enough. It felt like the apocalypse. Society was on the verge of collapse. The world economy, already battered by war, was pushed to its limits. What saved us? Well, the virus eventually burned itself out. It either killed its hosts or they developed immunity. The pandemic subsided after about 2 years, but it left an indelible scar on the world. It showed us just how vulnerable our interconnected global society is to a biological threat. It was a stark reminder that some of the greatest dangers we face aren't man-made, but come from nature itself. The world didn't end, but for a time, it must have felt like it was. Our next close call takes us into the cosmos. On June 30, 1908, a remote region of Siberia experienced an explosion of unimaginable power. It's known as the Tunguska event. In a flash, an explosion equivalent to about 1,000 Hiroshima bombs flattened over 2,000 square kilometers of forest. That's an area the size of a major city. 80 million trees were knocked down like toothpicks. The shockwave was felt hundreds of kilometers away, and for several nights after, the sky over Europe and Asia glowed strangely bright. So what caused it? For years, it was a mystery. But the scientific consensus now is that it was a large meteoroid or comet, perhaps 60 to 190 meters in diameter, that exploded in the atmosphere about 5 to 10 kilometers above the ground. Because it exploded in the air, it didn't leave a crater, which added to the initial confusion. Now, here's the terrifying part. Imagine if that object had arrived just a few hours later. Due to the Earth's rotation, the impact point would have been completely different. Instead of a remote Siberian forest, it could have exploded over a major European capital like St. Petersburg or London. An airburst of that magnitude over a populated area would have been an unprecedented catastrophe, causing millions of casualties and altering the course of history in ways we can barely comprehend. The Tunguska event was a cosmic game of Russian roulette, and on that day, humanity got lucky. It served as a massive wake-up call about the threat of near-Earth objects, a threat we are only now beginning to seriously address with planetary defense systems. These stories are just a few examples of how fragile our existence really is. From a single officer on a submarine to a faulty computer chip to a random celestial object, the line between our world and a very different, much darker one can be incredibly thin. It's a sobering thought, but it's also a testament to human resilience, courage, and sometimes, just plain old good luck. They show us that the future is not guaranteed, and that the choices of individuals can have consequences that ripple across the entire planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey to the brink. It's a heavy topic, but an important one to understand. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most incredible stories. Let me know in the comments which of these close calls you find the most terrifying. Or if there are any others you think should be on this list. Stay curious. And I'll see you in the next video.